So I'm excited to be able to come and continue this series. And I have to tell you, first and foremost, like before anything else, Ruth is one of my favorite books of the Bible. I think that Ruth is a beautiful picture of what it looks like for God to come and to show resilience and to be able to redeem people in their time of need. And I think so often we hear about the book of Ruth and we think it's like this awesome love story about Boaz and Ruth, and like that's what a lot of people pull out of it. And that is there. I think that's there. And if you read the story, that is obviously the narrative that's happening. But I think there's more to it. And so that's what I'm hoping to dig into as we go through this series in Ruth. But before we do that, I have felt compelled today to give a PSA, a public service announcement, all right, about Christian influencers. So if you know what I'm talking about, it's people that like post on like Instagram or TikTok or anything like that, and they like post these like really trendy videos about like, here's what the Bible says about this, and here's how it relates to my life. You know what I'm talking about? Am I alone in this, or is there anybody else that knows? Okay, some of you are nodding your heads. So there's people that do this, you know? What's that? Hey, stop, all right? Hey, I have a great Instagram. But I just feel like they're all over the place and out of control. And maybe if you don't know what I'm talking about, I want you to check this out, so.
Said to, like, I think Peter, upon this rock, I'll build my church. But look around, people. Where do you see churches built on rocks? You don't. It makes me sick. Do better. We have to build on rocks.
Church announcement number 1, quit giving 10%. When living for God, I always give 120% of my life to Him. Do better.
Falling down at the altar? How about not falling for her? I get it. But guys, we need to be falling at the altar. On your knees. Pray and stuff. It's really good. I pray a lot.
Wow, that spotlight is like really bright. And just like that spotlight is blinding me, sometimes my popularity and fame blind me and distract me from being focused on what's truly important in life. And that's creating really good content for you guys.
Yo, church starts at 10:30, but I'm here at 8:30. I did that for God. Cool. All right, I'll just hang out.
Story time. One time, I took my atheist friend to church, and after he saw me worshiping and dancing, he became a believer. My friend's name? Stephen Furtick. Wow, I did that, and you could too, if you just try harder. God is really amazing.
Please use other door. Do you know what that other door is? That's Jesus. Knock and you shall receive. Jesus, the door. Think about it.
A person once said that being an influencer is greater than being an apostle. And to that I say, thank you. It feels good to be noticed and appreciated. Please like and subscribe.
All right. So that's a joke, obviously. I'm okay with Christian influencers, all right? And that guy, Cool Carl, he does a lot of stuff like that, and he's honestly just making fun of himself. But the reason I bring that up is because the whole point of that video is the humble brag, right? The humble brag, literally the idea that you are trying to be humble but also kind of just like telling about yourself, but like, you know, under the radar, you know? And that's what that whole thing is. And so often I feel like the humble brag is one of those things that we as Christians just can disguise our bragging, you know? Like when we talk about ourselves, when we think about ourselves, it's like, no, like I feel God did this in my life. And, you know, that's when I got my master's degree because God's awesome. So, you know? That's what I'm talking about, though, is the humble brag. But today, I want to focus on humility. I want to talk about humility and what it looks like to be humble. And when we talk about humility and we understand humility, I want us to understand that humility is biblical. It's really, really good. It's a good thing. And we are going to pick up in a point in Ruth where a lot of people will gloss over and kind of push past. But I think it's really important to recognize this part of the story of Ruth and to see what God is doing in Ruth's life. So where we're starting is we're going to pick up to the point where now Ruth and Naomi are here and they're in Israel and they don't have anything. They don't have money. They don't have food. They have no way of making money or getting food. And they're trying to figure out what the next steps to do are. And so we are going to pick up starting in chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. And he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is a young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. All right, so now we have a picture of kind of the situation that they're in. So Naomi and Ruth, they don't have much. And remember, Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law. So not related by blood, they went and to go back to Naomi's land, her homeland, but this is not Ruth's homeland. So it's very different. It's a very different experience for where Ruth is at. And so she tells her, "All right, so you need to go to this land, and you need to go basically get some grain. You need to get some food for us." And what she is doing is she's gleaning from the fields. And what that means is the reapers will go and they'll cut down the stalks of wheat, and they'll go and they'll get everything that they need that is important and that is actually for their profit. But then usually there's stuff that's left on the ground, or maybe some stalks that they missed and things like that. And that's kind of when it was free reign for anybody that wanted to come and pick up stuff off the ground, or maybe pick up stuff that's like just still growing or whatever they need. That's what it looks like to glean. So Ruth is literally going out there and is going and saying, "All right, I'm going to get whatever's left so that I can make sure that we have food, so that we have something for Naomi." And so she's going out there, and not only is she going because, one, she's probably hungry and she probably wants food, but she's doing it in service to Naomi. And I want us to keep that in perspective for the rest of our time, is that Naomi is not related by blood to Ruth. They're not even of the same people group. But Ruth is giving and sacrificing her time to go out there. She goes out in the early morning, and she goes out all afternoon into this early evening. And so she's going and she's picking up all this stuff and she's doing this work, and Boaz sees her and is asking, "Well, who is this woman?" And so something that is important is that Moab and Moabites were not people that Israelites necessarily liked. Honestly, they really didn't like them. And so the fact that there is this Moabite woman that's going and that's picking off it from his field and things like that, most people would have gone and looked and be like, "Who is that Moabite? Who is that? What are they doing here?" But it's important for us to recognize that when he's going and when he looks out there, he does not go and he does not look at her for ethnicity. He does not go and see her because of what she looks like, but simply he notices and he brings up his servant saying that she's been out here digging and going for her mother-in-law, for Naomi. And Boaz probably knew who Naomi was because Naomi was married to Elimelech, who died, but Boaz is in Elimelech's family. So they probably knew each other, and there was probably some understanding of relation. But what he is recognizing here is the relation, and also he is not recognizing her ethnicity, but he's recognizing her for her actions. But we're going to continue and read through this passage and see what happens next. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close, my young woman. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" So here we're getting a little bit of a picture of Boaz's character. So he's going and he is seeing and recognizing Ruth for who she is. Not so much that she is this Moabite woman, but he's going there because he sees the service and the action that she is taking. And what Boaz is doing is he is filling a role of what we would call a kinsman redeemer. A kinsman redeemer. So this is a concept that is from Levitical law, and it's from the early part of the Bible, and it is somebody that would go and they would find someone that is part of their family or find some relation to their family and help them out when they're facing a tough time or when their life is just not going the way that they thought it would. That's what a kinsman redeemer does. And so a lot of times it's somebody that has good standing or that is able to actually do something. And so in this situation, because Ruth and Naomi are two women, and even the fact that Ruth is a Moabite woman, they don't have good standing. That's just the state of the day. And so Boaz is there filling this role as a kinsman redeemer. It's kind of like when you inevitably get into like a car accident, or you scratch your car, or maybe you like hit a pole or something like that, and you just ran out of money because you had to pay for class, or you had to pay rent, or you DoorDashed 5 times that week, or something like that, you know? But you're out of money, and so you're like trying to figure out, what do I do? Because I got to get my car to run. I got to go to work. I got to go to class. I got to do whatever I'm supposed to do. And it would look like calling up somebody that is like a mom or a dad or a brother or sister or aunt, uncle, or somebody in your life that is like a mom or a dad, and they're bailing you out. They're giving you the money to be able to go and get those repairs. That's similar to what a kinsman redeemer would look like. It's somebody that comes and that's able to help you in times of need. And so he is filling that role, and he's coming to Ruth and saying, no, you don't need to pick up what's left over. Don't pick up the trash that's on the ground. Don't pick up the scraps. But no, come to the field and actually get the real good stuff. He's going there and offering her this opportunity. He's feeding Ruth and Naomi. This isn't something he's just doing for Ruth because, like, he's got the hots for her or something like that. No, he's doing it because he is acting as a redeemer role. He's going and he is showing them that he cares about them. He's showing that he wants to fill this kinsman redeemer role. And in some ways, if you looked at the earlier passage, earlier in chapter 2, Naomi says, no, you go because you want to find favor in the sight of this man. You want to get this man on his good side. Like, you want to figure out how we can be in relationship with this man. And so, but Ruth's response is interesting because she doesn't go and she's not like going in there expecting Boaz to do anything. But instead, when Boaz offers this to her and says, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to watch over you, I'm going to feed you, I'm going to give you water, I'm going to give you what you need. Instead of saying, cool, thanks, that's what I was hoping you were going to do, she falls on her face and she says, thank you, but I don't know why you're doing this because I'm not from here. She recognizes this humility that Boaz has. She recognizes and sees that he is giving for her. And she is seeing the humility that comes from him. She is going and she is thanking him for what he's doing and asking him honestly, why would you do this? I am not even from here. I am not of these people. But she's going before him and saying, you don't have to do this. And think about how often, I think this comes from having like a little bit of like a Western idea, especially being in the United States, and we're a little bit more well-to-do than some other countries. And when we have things and they're given to us, it sometimes feels like an expectation. It's like, I deserve that. Like, I need that gift. I can have that gift. I've worked hard. I need that. I can have that. But what if we took a different approach to it? Like, instead of, that paycheck that you worked for the last 2 weeks, what if you thanked your employer? Or better yet, what if you thanked God for that paycheck when you got it? And instead of even using it all for yourself, giving it back, giving it to somebody else, giving it to the church, giving it to somebody in need, finding a missionary that needs support. Or let's take another step further. To recognize humility in what the Son did, in what Christ did. I think it's funny because I've grown up in the church, and for so long, it has been like, when I hear the gospel, I know the gospel. I know that Jesus died on the cross and that he rose again 3 days later. But what if we took that and every time we heard it, we stood in awe of that? We recognize the humility that Christ gave. We recognize what he showed us through giving his life on the cross. It would be amazing. See, recognizing humility allows us to stand in awe of the one who showed us greater humility. Humility is something that is so countercultural for us, but to recognize it and see it for what it is so important. But the story, it's not over yet. This passage isn't done. We still have a little bit more. And we are going to continue to see how this interaction between Boaz and Ruth goes. So let's continue the story here. All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me. This is Boaz talking to Ruth. And how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain. And she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, let her glean, even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Boaz is completely recognizing now Ruth's humility. See, before we can take a look and we could see, Ruth saw the humility that came from Boaz. But now Boaz is doing the same of Ruth. He is seeing how humble she is. He's even saying it more so. He's putting it up front. That she left her native land. She left the land that was hers, that she grew up in, that she is from, to go to a land that did not like her people, that was not a fan of who her people are. For a woman that she knew, but it's not somebody by blood. It's not a family member that she knew super well. And she could have done something like Orpah did. Remember last week we talked about Orpah, and she went back to Moab, and she's like, no, this is where I'm supposed to go. I'm going to go back where I'm supposed to be from. And honestly, Ruth's life probably could have been pretty easy. She didn't have to worry about going and gleaning from fields and things like that because she had a tribe that would provide for her. But instead, she took this difficult opportunity to be with Naomi. When I was in college, I wasn't a huge fan of going on mission trips. Now, I understand the importance of missions and going out to the world and telling people about Jesus, but I was always like, I could just go down the street and tell somebody about Jesus, and I was very comfortable doing that. Why did I have to go across the world to tell somebody about Jesus, And for a while, I kind of rested in that. But where I went to college, every spring break, they would do mission trips, and they'd have a lot of opportunities. And I had a friend that really pushed me to go on a mission trip. And she was like, no, you have to go. This will be really good for you. It'll be a really good opportunity for you to grow. I was like, no. But she said, imagine the opportunity that you get to share the gospel with people when you are faced with a challenging time like this. And sure, my life isn't on the line. I'm not facing death, and I'm not in the same situation that Ruth and Naomi are, but it's something I'm very uncomfortable with, and it's something that I know is probably going to be difficult. And it was in that moment that I really felt God to kind of push my heart, and I was like, maybe I should go on this. Maybe this is good for my relationship with God, and I want to go into ministry. This might be a good thing. And I kind of like this girl. Maybe I should listen to her, And so I ended up signing up for a trip, and I went to London, England. And I think I was the only guy in that group outside of one other dude. And I went on that trip, and it was fantastic. It was challenging. It was difficult. It was awkward as an American person walking up to a bunch of British people, and they don't really like American people. So you're going up there and you're trying to be like, hey, tell me about what you believe. And they're like, no, get away, get away. Because, they're all British and they're all nice kind of thing, But I went, and it was a challenge, but I loved it. So much so that I went and I led the trip the next 2 years. And if I ultimately think about that, and one, I ended up marrying the girl that pushed me to go on that trip, so I can add to the Ruth love story if you guys really want me to. But also, what if I would have stepped back and avoided that? There was an obvious calling for me that I was supposed to be pushed, but what if I had selfishly said, no, I'm not going to listen to that? And now you guys might not be in the same position. You might not be in a situation where you're being pushed to go on a mission trip. But Ruth obviously felt some sort of compulsion. She wanted to go with Naomi, and even though it was difficult. And in her humility, she's saying, no, I'm going to go. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do this. And that challenge is something that is amazing because Ruth is not a part of God's people. She's a Moabite. That's not part of God's people. But she is reflecting characteristics of somebody that truly has a changed heart. Because humility is countercultural. Choosing humility in a countercultural world choosing humility is countercultural in a non-humble world. The world will constantly tell you to push yourself in a way that you feel comfortable and make sure that you are good and make sure that you are safe. But how often are those challenging situations that we're put in that we neglect because it would be easier to choose something else? But instead we could take a step in humility and say, no, I'm going to do this. I want to be a part of this. See, humility, it's countercultural. It's not part of the world. It's different from the rest of the world. And it's important to see that because Ruth is a picture of humility. She is showing this is what it looks like to give more than what she thinks is right. To say, no, Naomi is more important. I'm going to go do this for her. And to actually go and do that. And there's two things I want us to see. That showing humility allows us to do two different things. The first thing is that we represent Christ well. That if we go and that we show that others that, no, you are definitely more important than me. Believers, unbelievers, whatever. If you go out and show other people that you are more important than me, how awesome would that be? To have somebody give and sacrifice for them just so that you could show that I care about you, that I love you, that you matter so much more than even I matter to myself. That I'm willing to take the challenge of giving for you so that I could be less than myself. And that represents Christ. It shows an action of love, of caring. But that's why, secondly, that we can reflect Christ well. That Christ is this amazing image of humility. The giving and sacrificing of his own life for people that rebelled against him, that spat in his face, that told him that he was less, that still will sin against him, that push back against him so hard. And he says, no, I'm going to give my life. What an amazing picture of humility. I mentioned this in the small group I was in last week, so some of you have heard this story. But one of the moments when I was challenged in humility the most is back when I was in college. My RA, and I may have told some of you guys this story, but my RA, his name was Aogu. He's from Japan. He's awesome. He's back in Japan now too, and he's loving it. But Aogu was probably one of the most committed followers of Christ I had ever met. And he was going to Cedarville in the cornfields of Ohio to get a Bible education so that he could go and do ministry in Japan at his church. That was, he said, was probably one of the bigger ones in his area, and he had 9 people in his church. So he was really excited to get back over there, though. But his last semester, about halfway through the semester, he found out he didn't have enough credits to graduate. And he needed to load on the credits if he wanted to be able to finish in time. And so for the second half of his last semester, he was taking 25 credits. And some of those credits, he was doing a 15-week class in 8 weeks. And I'm telling you, this man, he probably slept like 4 hours a night if that. And I remember that there was one time I was particularly struggling with something. I was really struggling with sin, and I didn't know how to handle it, and I couldn't sleep. And I remember that I went out my door, and before bed, when Algu would go around to each of our doors in the hall, we had 10 doors, and he would pray for the people in each of those rooms. And he saw me come out, and I was flustered, and I was frustrated, and I was sad, and I was crying. And instead of going to bed for the 4 hours that he was going to get that night, he stayed up with me for like 2 or 3 hours just to talk and pray and laugh and enjoy time together. And that might seem like, okay, so it's not like he's given his life. And sure, you're right. But he was giving sleep. He was giving that time for me. And I will always remember that story. I will always reflect on that story because of the humility he showed me. Because he said, no, you are so much greater than I am. And I do my best to reflect what he has done for me and what he's done for so many others. And that's what I want us to see with Ruth. She's humble. She gave her time. She gave her life so that she could provide for somebody else. And I want to challenge us to look at how we can do that together too. But I'm going to let that happen in our small groups. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we will go ahead and dismiss into small groups, okay? Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you for your word and the fact that we get to read about this story from Ruth. That it's an amazing and beautiful love story between two people that do care for each other. But ultimately that we get to see humility in that. We get to see your humility reflected in Ruth. In this person that came way before your son, but ultimately was showing imagery of a believer more than some of the other people around her. Lord, let us reflect that and let us do that same thing so that we could show others what your son has done and his work on the cross. In your name I pray. Amen.